Hi.
So should we begin with like how has been the IndiGo's expansion plans in Indian market and how do you see the competitive advantage?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously talking from a cargo point of view, India and IndiGo in the last couple of years has really kind of changed in the sense that predominantly we've always been an operator of narrow-body aircraft, passenger aircraft, in which we've loaded cargo in the belly. And that still remains, I'd say, about 85% of our business, and it's very much the core of what we're doing. However, in the last couple of years, we've kind of morphed into what I think is a more mature cargo space. For us, that's involved two things. One is the introduction of wet lease wide body capacity, which we have from operating between India and Turkey, Istanbul, both from Delhi and Mumbai. And that's really IndiGo's, I guess, first step into palletized wide body cargo, which is the holy grail of cargo. And the second thing has been obviously our freighters. We inducted our freighters just under 2 years ago. We have three dedicated A321 freighters with a capacity of between 22 and 26 tons, depending on the loadability. And that's been a very good success story, I think, particularly in the last year, where we've managed to really increase our utilization on the freighters, using them for regional connectivity, international regional connectivity mainly. We now have frequent services between China and India, Vietnam and India, Hong Kong and India, and India to the Middle East. And then on top of that, we have a bunch of operations that I guess are more ad hoc in terms of charter operations, supporting some of the e-commerce players, some of the integrators, depending how their needs are, on a day-to-day or week-by-week basis.
And how do you see the competitive advantage? And what are the trends which are coming for the cargo capabilities to increase? Like you have talked about this in the session.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's look at the market and where India's going. And I talked about this at the conference. I mean, I think going forward, India's going to move up the value chain in terms of what exports India's doing. At the moment, and we're a very small player international, so we're only about 2% of the Indian market, but what's very key is you need to be a player in the pharmaceutical world. India is really becoming a pharmaceutical powerhouse. In the perishable exports, which is really the majority of the exports that IndiGo does to the Middle East and the region is around perishable, so Indian farm produce, right, which is enjoyed by people around the region. But I think going forward, and where I have the biggest conversation at the moment, is around I guess technology, right, and products that India is going to start manufacturing, particularly when you look at the whole China plus one strategy that many multinational manufacturers are having. China is always going to remain a very important manufacturing hub, but India is a fantastic choice in order to hedge that hub and also look for future, I guess, capability or future growth opportunities, right? I said in this forum today, one should look today at the imports that India has and imagine going forward a flip. The imports that India is bringing in at the moment, a lot of high-tech goods, a lot of value goods, very high up the value chain. A number of years from now, that will be flipped, and India will be exporting that. And I think that's where India-based carriers, so IndiGo, obviously Air India, we have a big opportunity to really see some great growth in cargo, particularly in high-value goods.
And what initiatives should be taken in terms of the infrastructure and technology development to enhance the complete ecosystem of the cargoes?
Sure. Look, I think it's a great question. I think a lot has already happened. We've got some really great greenfield opportunities in terms of airport infrastructure in India. We've seen that in a number of airports going forward are all greenfield. And when you have a greenfield at new airport development, cargo, is very much part of that conversation because it's seen as a big national agenda. So I think that's important. Is there a way to go? Sure, there is. One of the challenges, and I mentioned it again in the conference that India has, is unlike places like Singapore or Dubai or Hong Kong or even Doha, India's got multiple international gateways. We're not concentrating on one city where all of the investment, all of the infrastructure, all of the great enhancement can go into one airport. We've got to do this and replicate this across not only 6 metros, the 6 metros we always talk about, the second tier, which very soon will become first tier. And I think that's going to be a challenge, and it's going to require a lot of coordination, a lot of work with the airlines, the airport operators, the freight forwarders, along with the regulatory authorities of India to make sure that we can sort of build that as best we can with the right level of standardization and consistency across the whole supply chain.
Coming forward, what's the strategy of IndiGo in terms of in building up an air cargo?
Yep.
there is a government intervention also. They are also coming with lots of things, tier two, tier three.
Yeah.
Then on the global level, there are the geopolitical tensions also,
Yeah.
but there are the developments also. So, like, what is the Indigo's strategy in terms of creating this
Yeah.
cargo?
Well, I mean, the most important thing about cargo is to have the capacity. At the moment, we're mainly narrow body, so our capacity is a big challenge, and I guess is a big frustration for the sales teams. They want to sell, sell, sell. We don't necessarily have the space. For us going forward, as you know, we've invested going forward in the A350 passenger aircraft. And these passenger aircraft have got very good capability. I'll give you an example. An A350 passenger aircraft on any given route, if it had the right load factor and the right range, can carry as much as this freighter that I'm operating today, right? So they're almost more efficient. So that's fantastic. To me, from a cargo point of view within the organization, that's really our next big step, is how we're going to manage ourselves to fulfill and optimize that capacity. But what's going to be very important around that is the whole infrastructure and the ground operation. Today, as I said, we're a very small part of Indian exports, probably only 2% of the capacity. Going forward, that will obviously change when our wide bodies come. Are we set up for the infrastructure on the ground? Probably not, but we're getting there, and we're having a lot of great conversations with the airport operators, the two big groups in particular, in going forward. In terms of the other part around geopolitics, etc. I mean, obviously, I don't get involved in that. Air cargo is often driven and spikes in air cargo driven by tensions geopolitically. We've seen that recently in the Red Sea. It's been very well known. IndiGo doesn't really operate beyond, we don't operate direct into Europe, so we haven't really been able to take advantage of the increase in rates and what's going on in that space. But look, for me, it's concentrating on our capacity going forward, how we as an organization can work with the shippers, with the forwarders, with the airports to make sure that we optimize and use that the best as possible.
And finally, how do you find the ACAAI conference?
It's great. That's great. I mean, this is my first time to an ACAAI conference, and I've only just started this morning, and I've been on the panel for 2 hours. But no, it's great. It's great to see such a good turnout across the industry, which is fantastic. In my job at IndiGo, as I said to you earlier, about 85% of our business at the moment in the cargo space is domestic. So for me, I'm stepping into the international piece now, which is where I came from before with Cathay Pacific. So it's great to see so many familiar faces and to have a conversation and talk about industry important matters. It's not about competition today. It's about how we can all work together. End of the day, aviation is a force for good. Air cargo is very much part of that force for good. So how do we work together? Because it's you as the consumers that are going to benefit if we get all of this right. Great. Thank you.